Okay, you're good to go.
Okay, we'll call the public safety meeting to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Boyd,
Present.
Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Hubbard,
Present.
Alderman Muhammad, Alderwoman Boyd, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard,
Here.
Chairman Vaquero.
Present.
For present, you have quorum.
We have a quorum. Okay, so we just do the approval of the minutes from the January 14th meeting.
I move for approval of minutes dated January the 14th, 2021.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderwoman Howard,
Aye.
Alderwoman Hubbard,
Aye.
Alderman Muhammad, Alderwoman Boyd, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard,
Aye.
Chairman Vaquero.
Aye.
5 aye votes.
Okay, so today we're going to have a discussion on the Cure Violence program. And I think I'm going to kind of lean on the Vice Chairman, Vice Chairman Boyd, if you're there somewhere.
I'm here.
So what I think I'm going to do is, you think I should just go down the speaker list first and then let everybody talk, or do you want to ask questions of the speakers?
I don't want to have a presentation from the speakers and then we can ask questions there.
Okay, so I'm going to go right down the list then and, get some updates on Cure Violence. I think we start with Dr. Eccles, and I'll just follow the list straight down. So Dr. Eccles, why don't you go ahead and bring us up to speed on Cure Violence on your part. We're going to go down the list.
All right, thank you. I'm trying to see. Thank you, Alderman Vaquero and the Public Health, Public Safety Committee for this opportunity to provide an update on Cure Violence implementation in the city of St. Louis. So as you all know, the Cure Violence program was founded in 2000 by Dr. Gary Sluckin, who is a former medical officer with the World Health Organization. And his goal was to create a public health approach to violent crime, and with a specific focus on reducing gun-related violence in communities across not only the United States, but the world. And so this strategy has been adopted by several jurisdictions, again, not only in the US, but across the world, and has been shown to be effective when implemented according to the model that has been created. Currently, Cure Violence is being implemented in more than 50 sites, 25 sites in the US, and in 10 countries around the world. On average, communities can expect to see a reduction in violent crime, again, related to gun violence within 1 year after implementation. Again, if the program is being implemented according to the model that was created by Dr. Sluckin and his team. Specifically in the city of St. Louis, there were 3 sites that were identified. Initially, upon its inception for implementation in the city of St. Louis, Cure Violence was within the Division of Public Safety and subsequently transitioned to the City of St. Louis Department of Health. At this time, Cure Violence implementation is under the direction of the City of St. Louis Department of Health. We are responsible for providing management, technical assistance, and oversight of the implementation and evaluation of Cure Violence in the city of St. Louis. Before we launched sites, we used the data that was provided by the City of St. Louis Division of Public Safety, particularly the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department data that showed gun-related incidents of gun violence across the city. After reviewing that information, analyzing it, and evaluating that data, 3 locations within the city of St. Louis were identified to be proper locations for the implementation of Cure Violence. The first site that was selected was Wells Goodfellow Hamilton Heights, which is being managed by Employment Connection. In early 2020, Employment Connection was selected to be the vendor to oversee implementation of Cure Violence in that site. Subsequently, the Employment Connection was selected to also implement Cure Violence in the Dutchtown neighborhood, as well as the Urban League of Metropolitan St. Louis, which is under the leadership of Mike McMillan and the Vice President of Public Safety, James Clark. And they were selected to operate the city's second Cure Violence site, which is currently located in Walnut Park, which covers parts of Walnut Park East and Walnut Park West neighborhoods. Employment Connection, again, when we looked at the how to determine which site to was appropriate for a particular vendor, we used a standardized approach to evaluating the proposals that were submitted. We ranked those proposals, and then we used, according to the ranking system, we used the ranking system to determine which vendor will be selected based on their current ability to work with justice-involved individuals, as well as provide a wraparound service for those individuals. So we're not just hiring people, but we're also giving them and those individuals that they connect with on a daily basis, give them a platform to achieve self-sufficiency and optimal health. And so for each site that is operating in the city of St. Louis, there's a site manager, there's interrupters, as well as case managers. The interrupters are, again, responsible for interrupting acts of gun violence and working with individuals who may be high risk. And the case managers also play a primary role of making sure that those individuals who are high risk are engaged and connected to services that can reduce their risk for conducting acts of gun violence. So each site at this point is staffed, and they have gone through training, which has been provided by Cure Violence Global, to make sure that they're able to, one, implement the model that was created by Dr. Sluckin and his team, which is, again, really critical for us to, when we think about evaluating the work that's being done, because we want to speak to the impact that implementation of Cure Violence is having in our communities. And again, just so that the community knows, as well as the individuals on the Public Safety Committee, there are only 3 sites, and so each site has their own designated catchment area that was selected by based on the data that was available by the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Serena Muhammad, and this is. Serena will give you some background on how Cure Violence got to the city of St. Louis.
So good afternoon, I'm Serena Muhammad, and I've been providing staff support to the Cure Violence Steering Committee. And what I'm going to talk primarily about is how we got to the point of having a steering committee and having community members so actively involved in the Cure Violence sites for St. Louis, because that's something that's unique to our region. It's not always present in all of the models that you'll see in other parts of the country. So one thing that was distinctive is that community members actually rallied to have Cure Violence come to the city. Community members who were concerned about the level of gun violence, trying to figure out what could be done, did some research on their own to discover the Cure Violence model, and thought that it would be ideal. So they went about the work of organizing other community members to show up at meetings and talk about the importance of this model and really advocate for bringing this to the St. Louis region. The reason that that's important is because in many cities, it's a unit of government that works directly with Cure Violence and invites them in. But because community was so involved on the front end, We have members of the community who traditionally wouldn't necessarily work with government or even work with the service providers, who are really paying attention to how all of this rolls out, and are rolling up their sleeves to be as involved and as active as possible. So those community members formed a steering committee. That steering committee meets regularly. They are members of the community that is being served, as well as interested stakeholders who come from institutions who want to support Cure Violence. All of them consider themselves to be boosters or advocates. So their main interest is making sure that the program does not become politicized, that it does not become a talking point, but that we're really paying attention to the reason that we brought it here to the city in the first place, and that's to address gun violence. So they hear directly from community members, because some of them live in the communities that are being served, and they bring information back to the Cure Violence Steering Committee to figure out how we can support the health department as well as support the sites. So when we learn of things that are not going as well as they should, we bring that attention back and we try to problem solve. When we learn of resources that are needed that might be outside of what's available through the current Cure Violence model, we think about ways to provide augmentation or enhancement. So it's really an additive component to make sure that the community remains engaged and activated. I think it's important to note that Cure Violence is a part of a larger picture of what needs to happen to actually address violence. And the steering committee is very good at thinking about what other additional supports and resources are needed to make sure that Cure Violence is successful. So I would consider this to be like a booster team, making sure that everything is in order and that the support is there from the communities. The members of the Cure Violence Steering Committee, there's kind of a group that's institutional. So these are organizations that are positioned to provide resources or support, like the hospital-based violence intervention programs, which are similar to Cure Violence, but their point of intervention is in the hospitals. So we have those organizations represented on the steering committee. We have some funders who actually are interested in philanthropy related to gun violence. We have institutional partners that do research, and then we have community members who live in those communities or near those communities who are interested in making sure that the program is done to fidelity on the ground. We've invited members of the steering committee to this meeting. So as appropriate, as we go through the meeting, they can respond to some specific things that we've heard as we're listening to what's happening in the community. And also we've invited the members of the vendors who also serve on the steering committee to talk about some early successes or things that they think should be elevated to the Board of Aldermen, to this particular committee. So I will stop there with those remarks and of course answer questions as appropriate.
I think next we'll have some updates from Mr. Sal Martinez, who's overseeing, whose employment connection and overseeing the Wells Goodfellow Hamilton Heights site, as well as the site in Dutchtown.
Thank you, Dr. Echols, and good afternoon, members of the Public Safety Committee. We are very excited to have been selected to operate 2 of the 3 initial Cure Violence sites in the city of St. Louis, and I'll just provide a few updates and certainly be happy to answer any questions that anyone may have. Our initial team in Wells Goodfellow Hamilton Heights is now fully staffed. Our office is located at 5502 through 04 Natural Bridge. We just installed some new signage at the location last week, so it's easier to cite. The location is owned by the Hamilton Heights Neighborhood Association, so we've been very pleased to partner with the duly recognized Community Development Corporation that has been serving that neighborhood for decades. And we've also formed a very close working relationship with the Wells Goodfellow Neighborhood Association as part of that work. As Dr. Echols mentioned, we do have a site manager, an outreach supervisor, several violence interrupters, and 3 outreach workers. Their typical work schedules as it relates to the violence interrupters and outreach workers is as follows. Tuesdays and Thursdays, they typically work from 2 p.m. to 11 p.m. Fridays and Saturdays, they typically work from 3 p.m. to midnight. That is certainly an unconventional schedule, but that is done on purpose because that is when most often gun violence occurs in these communities that we are focusing on. We've been very intentional in making sure that we hire the best staff that we possibly can for these positions. Several of the individuals that we have hired are justice involved, or who some may refer to as ex-offenders. And this was done intentionally. We wanted to hire individuals who had demonstrated credibility and relationships in these communities, in these neighborhoods, so that they could hit the ground running, so to speak, as it relates to identifying and working with high-risk individuals. Cure Violence Global's definition of high-risk individuals include individuals who are justice involved, individuals who are known to carry firearms, individuals who are known to have shot other individuals, or, as is often the case, been shot themselves. We're focusing primarily on youth and young adults ages 16 to 25, but certainly other high-risk individuals who may be younger or older than that range are certainly eligible to participate in the program. The outreach workers are expected to eventually develop a caseload of at least 15 high-risk clients each that they will form close and lasting relationships with. As part of their work, in addition to, of course, interrupting violence and providing conflict mediation, they are also responsible to connecting these high-risk individuals to other in-house services that we have at Employment Connection. So far, both teams have been very successful at referring high-risk clients to our agency for services such as job training and placement, mental and behavioral health counseling, eviction prevention, rapid rehousing services, in addition to access to PPE supplies, clothing, and food. And so this is all done in the process of developing lasting and enduring incredible relationships with both the high-risk clients that they're working with and the community overall. Both teams have also been regularly canvassing their catchment areas with public education materials, hosting several events monthly meant to inform and educate the community about the Cure Violence program. And I certainly want to thank Dr. Eccles and his team for providing us with the necessary advice and counsel to make sure that we are hosting these events in a safe fashion to protect our staff, clients, and community residents. Transitioning to the Dutchtown team, our office there is located at 3207 Merrimack within the Neighborhood Innovation Center, which is a shared nonprofit space in the Dutchtown neighborhood. Already we have formed close alliances there with organizations such as the Dutchtown South Community Development Corporation, the Thomas Dunn Learning Center, Gene Slay's Boys and Girls Club, the Incarnate Word Foundation, and Downtown Dutchtown, who have all welcomed us in and invited us to quickly get involved with the community. And so just like the Wells Goodfellow Hamilton Heights team, the Dutchtown team has also been actively canvassing, hosting public events, and connecting those high-risk individuals that they are working with to the in-house services that we have at Employment Connection. So I'll stop there, and if there are any questions that anyone has, I'm happy to answer now or later on in the meeting.
All right, thank you, Sal, for that update. Next, we'll transition to the representative from the Urban League of Metropolitan St. Louis, Mr. James Clark, who is overseeing the implementation of Cure Violence in the Walnut Park neighborhood.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I want to first commend the City of St. Louis Department of Public Safety for making this investment in the Cure Violence model. You know, I have been working in this space for over 30 years and have long advocated that as it relates to crime and violence, we've been too cerebral for too long, that it is time for us to turn this crisis over to the subject matter experts. The subject matter experts in this instance are individuals who have a criminal background, individuals who really understand the mentality of crime and violence. So I'm very excited about working this model. I will say that it's going to really need to be scaled up. One of the things that we recognize as implementing in the Walnut Park neighborhood, that you have High Point, that's a neighboring community that really needs this kind of engagement model. Then you have Dayton, which is on the other side, that needs this engagement model. So I think that looking at being in 3 neighborhoods is great. But I think when you look at the data, to really get our arms around this issue of gun violence and crime in general, there are 12 St. Louis City neighborhoods that need this model. There are 6 St. Louis County neighborhoods, and there are 6 neighborhoods over in East St. Louis. So I'm very excited about working the model. I'm assured that Sal will be able to say and agree that there's a lot of low-hanging fruit, that we're seeing the real seeding of neighborhood change. Excuse me. Our staff has been hired. They have been vetted. I can commend the Cure Violence Global team for making themselves available to make sure that we recruited and selected the best men and women for this job. Our location is 6050 Goodfellow, which is an annex of New Northside Church. It is a church that has been very active in anti-crime initiatives for decades. We have begun neighborhood engagement. We have begun door-to-door canvassing. We have begun to do neighborhood and family assessments. Very excited that we've been able to identify high-risk individuals that we've begun to build relationships with. We are very pleased that parents and grandparents are coming up to our location with their testimony about how encouraging it is to have their son or their daughter finally find something that they can be a part of and be proud of. Some of the things that we've done in the Walnut Park neighborhood, we've done PPE distribution. We have worked with the neighborhood churches to schedule and plan activities for the upcoming months. We are working with neighborhood businesses and the Northwest High School Alumni Association. As Sal discussed, our staff work non-traditional hours. We have a very strong, committed group of men and women that take this job extremely serious because they know and they understand that in order to turn and begin to address this issue of crime and violence, that they are to be the tip of the spear. Our caseworkers, as I mentioned, have already begun to identify high-risk individuals. We are receiving referrals from our case managers for job training, drug counseling. We have had to relocate a family, excuse me, because of a homicide that occurred. We had to relocate 4 sons to prevent retaliation. Just 2 weeks ago, a father and daughter witnessed a homicide, and we were able to relocate that family and work with the St. Louis City Police Department to get warrants issued on the suspect. So we should have a good outcome from that. But, you know, once again, just want to underscore how important it is that this model be supported, that this model looks for rapid expansion. I know that there are some confines within city government, but if I had a wish list, it would be that we go from 3 neighborhoods to 12 neighborhoods before the spring and summer set in. I, you know, parallel it to having a sponge and trying to absorb water in a sink while the faucet is still running. We will be able to address some of the crime and violence, but in order to really get the comfort that the St. Louis metropolitan area so desperately needs, the model is going to have to be scaled up. I'm also proud that Sal and his staff have formed a very cohesive bond with members of our staff, where they're beginning to share information, help with situations that arise. So there's a very good culture amongst the men and women working the model. So I will be available for any questions, but once again, I cannot underscore it enough that this was a very wise investment by the city of St. Louis.
Thank you, James, for that update. As you mentioned, so evaluation of these first 3 sites is really critical to give us a foundation and a roadmap for expanding in the event that there's additional funding and support to do so. However, the primary focus for the 3 sites now is making sure that we in the city of St. Louis adhere to the model that was created by, again, Dr. Sluckin and his team, so that the models can be properly evaluated. And then again, we can create a roadmap to move forward based off of the data that's obtained during the implementation. We do have co-chairs for the Cure Violence Steering Committee. We have Reverend Charles Norris, who I'd like to open up the floor for him to make some comments, as well as Ms. Latricia Clark.
Yes, please, that would be nice.
Good afternoon, everyone. Pleasure to be here with you today. I'd like to echo the sentiments of both Sal and James in terms of the investment, the needed investment that is necessary in our communities here. In terms of investment, you know, when you look at the population of those 3 neighborhoods, at least based upon the ones I was able to gather, based upon the 2010 demographics, the census, that's about roughly 29,000 people in those 3 neighborhoods. With the funds that have been allocated to them, that really breaks down to about $78 per person in those neighborhoods. And so when I look at the importance of the relationship building, because that's what makes this unique, I think there is a true collaborative effort where relationships are being not only built, but they're being maintained. And then the investment that is being made is the proverbial proof in the pudding to show people that this is a little different. And so for far too long, there are too many investments that have been made in our region, and this is an issue across the country, that really have been made on the backs of young people. The things that they need after school programs, those things that they need, safety nets for kids that don't have the types of home environments that we would like for them to have. That's what this program is really helping to do. Someone to be able to talk to them, that they can confide in and share information with. And so from that perspective, $78 per person in those neighborhoods, I think is worth the investment to try to cut down on some of the retaliatory violence that occurs. And then lastly, other thing I'd like to say is putting this in perspective. Cure violence is not going to just cause an automatic drop in violence overnight. I think it's important for us to understand that this is a evidence-based, viable long-term solution. And so we need all of the programs that are going on out there. But Cure Violence is the one that is going to help us to really start to kind of be a type of vaccine, so that as we reach a level of love and understanding and respect that people can have for the institutions in the neighborhoods and for one another, that is going to really pay significant dividends for us in the years to come. Thank you and God bless you.
Thank you, Reverend Norris.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Latricia Clark. I'm the co-chair for the steering committee for Cure Violence STL. I share all of the sentiments that you heard from everyone that spoke before me. I am 100% behind the model. My organization, ABOID, we operate through St. Louis City and St. Louis County as it relates to just community engagement, advocacy, and risk management. And I just can't begin to tell you the stories of the individuals who don't feel comfortable coming forward, and in comparison to what this program is providing them. When we talk about trauma and we talk about things that take place generationally, and you have people who deal with trauma and grief for years, and finally to have an avenue where they can come to a meeting or engage with individuals that are in the same situation that they're experiencing honestly, and be able to speak without fear of being hurt and knowing that someone is going to be there. So the Cure Violence model, I've said it before, we're experiencing COVID, but crime has been a pandemic for a very, very long time. And I'm truly grateful that we're taking a health approach, right? When you look at different things that cause individuals to commit a particular crime, some people steal food because they're hungry, right? And some people do different things for other reasons. But what we fail to understand in interrupting those things, we have to understand, why does that individual see that as a viable resource, right? When you go to the hospital and you're sick, they look for the symptoms. What are the symptoms? So Cure Violence looks to trigger and connect some of the symptoms with our citizens. I agree with James Clark about the model needing to be scaled up into different areas. But as of right now, I just really thank you all for providing the resources and the funding. And when we look at $78 per person, you can really shake your head in disbelief, because it's like, we think about the investment, we think about our children, and we think about our future, and we talk about preparation. A lot of times we look at the overall dollar, but when you break it down to what it really means to each individual, each community, and each household, we know it's still not enough. So I'm glad to be of service. I'll take any questions that you have, and thank you so much for your time.
Okay,
Thank you for those comments. And so just to reiterate, one of the things that we also wanted to clear with the community is that this is not a law enforcement program. So this isn't a program that works closely with the police. So the interrupters have a certain model that they have to adhere to. And so this is separate. And so we also want to make sure that the members of this committee understand that as well, because there's a trust issue that has to be gained when you're doing this type of work. And not having that trust could be detrimental to the lives of the individuals that have been selected to do this, to carry out this work. And so we're very mindful of that. And so we want, again, this committee to know that this is not a law enforcement program, but a public health approach to addressing gun violence that has shown to be effective, not only in the United States, but in other parts of this of the world. So at this point, we'll take any questions. We'll field any questions that members of the committee may have.
Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go down the list, and there's other folks here. So, Madam Clerk, if the people not on the committee that want to speak would raise their hand, Madam Clerk, if you would write them down in order after we go through the committee, then yes. And I guess anyone else that wants to speak. I got a text, but it doesn't say from who yet. I gotta figure that out. But anyway, so Madam Clerk, if whoever raises their hand in the raise hand thing, she'll write it down. After we go through the committee members, then she'll go through the order of the other people that want to speak. So let me start with Jeffrey Boyd, Vice Chairman Boyd.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to all the presenters. Dr. Eccles, what metrics are we using in order to show success or needs of improvement with the program?
Honorable Board, that's a great question. So one metric that we looked at is one of the metrics that we looked at when we were determining which sites would be appropriate for implementing cure violence. So we're looking at the incidence of gun violence. Then we're also going to be looking at the case management. So how many people are being connected to different services to prevent them from engaging in acts of gun violence. And so a lot of this information, some of the data is being collected now. So one of the things that each of these sites had to be trained on was the database that Cure Violence Global uses to collect all this information in a standardized fashion. And so we'll be pulling reports from that database to assess the impact of the implementation of cure violence in these particular catchment areas. But again, we'll also be looking at the incidents of gun violence that's captured by the police department and mapping that out to see exactly where acts of gun violence are occurring in these catchment areas.
Do we have a baseline in order to measure from? You know, and when I say that, I mean, like, you mentioned incidents, and when you just say gun violence, I'm guessing, because you said incidents, gun violence, case management, right?
Right. So for the case management piece, it would be 0. Because it's implemented before. And then for acts of gun violence, so we have the 2019 data that was available by the police department. And so what we did when we selected the first sites, we actually looked back 5 years. We had 5 years of data that was used to determine what the first 3 sites were implemented. So we had gun violence data from 2015 through 2019. And so we'll use that information to determine which sites were selected.
Okay, so let's suppose that the first year, and I know, and I heard James talk about this, and I agree 100%, certainly the first year and maybe the first 2, you know, are going to probably be some of the probably most challenging years. And but yet there still may be some success, although homicides are either flat or may have increased. How do you reconcile after year 1 and 2, homicides did not decrease, but yet services, you know, increase? I mean, how do you reconcile the success of the program, or again, you know, areas where we may need to improve after year 1?
Yeah, so it's really important as well to recognize that the responsibility of the site is for their catchment area. So overall, as just like other issues, acts of violence can move from one area to another. So we're looking specifically at the catchment area where the programs are operating. And so that's the focus. So if gun violence overall across the city doesn't increase, we have to look and see, okay, what was the incidence of gun violence in the Wells Goodfellow Hampton Heights catchment area? What was the incidence of gun violence in the Dutchtown catchment area? What was the incidence of gun violence in the Walnut Park catchment area? So those specific areas are very specific. So I know oftentimes we just look at the overall city data, but we have to tease that out, because we want to look at if this program is actually being impactful in the catchment areas, I mean the areas where they are designated to operate.
Okay, I'm not sure if I was clear on your response. So let me give you an example. So let's say last year, Hamilton Heights, Wells Goodfellow combined had 10 murders, which we know was way more than that. And then a year after Cure Violence, it has 10 murders or 11 murders. How do you reconcile the good work that's being done with the fact that gun violence did not decrease? And how do we, because certainly there are going to be the naysayers, right? You're going to be people that's going to say, hey, it's not working, you know, see, crime went up in Wells Goodfellow, we're just throwing away money, you know. So how do we reconcile with all the deliverable of services that are being rendered with the fact that homicides didn't go down, nor did the incidents of people being shot?
Right, so that's the evaluation data will tell us that. And so we'll be able to not only look at why if it didn't decrease, why didn't it decrease? So that's answering the why behind the issue is really going to be critical. And so that's why it's really important for us to make sure that we're standardizing the implementation of cure violence across the 3 different sites, so that when we're evaluating these programs, we can be able to answer the why behind these issues that may arise, such as, you know, maybe the incidence of gun violence, if it doesn't decrease the way we want it to, or the way that is, if it doesn't decrease in the way we want it to, we should be able to answer the why behind that.
Okay, and the last question, Yield. It was my understanding that the cure violence model does not work with police, which I was kind of surprised when I was told that. And I was told that it doesn't work with police because you want people to feel safe. You want people to feel like they can trust the interrupters and trust the process. Is that true or not true?
That is true. So this it's not a law enforcement program, and so you know, we look at the individuals that are essentially the focus population for this type of work. These are individuals that, you know, they're justice involved typically, and so you have to be mindful about the amount of trust that that you need to actually interrupt situations. So if you break that trust, you put your entire team in danger. You can potentially put the entire community in danger. And so we have to be very mindful that you know, the trust that's gained amongst these different groups in the city of St. Louis, that be maintained so that our staff that are implementing this very difficult work can do so in a safe manner. And I'll have Serena Muhammad chime in a little bit on that as well.
Okay.
Just typing in the chat. So 2 things to keep in mind when you're comparing year-to-year data, and we've been doing this a lot in public health, is factoring in COVID. Just like it had an impact on everything else, it had an impact on violence. Unfortunately, across the country, violence spiked in 2020. And then locally, when you look at the delays in implementation, the first cure violence site was slated to start in April of 2020, right when COVID hit. So we have a program that is evidence-based that has to change the way that it does business because of COVID. So all of the social distancing requirements, change the hiring process, caused some delays. And I'm offering that as context because I think it's important that we not pretend as if COVID didn't happen, because it does have an impact on what happened on the ground as far as implementation goes. And then the second thing to consider is that even in the best case scenario, if there was no COVID and no delays, the first site started in April. The next 2 sites didn't start until November of 2020. So in our minds, it feels like cure violence has been around for a long time because we've been talking about it for a long time, but we actually haven't had staff hired, trained, and on the ground until very recently. So we can't expect immediate results on the ground when we haven't had the people there actually doing the work. So you've seen me talking for about a year and planning, but the actual interrupters just started. And I think we have to give them time to actually do the work and see the evidence from the work that they're doing.
And Serena, thank you so much for putting that in context, because that's what I want to make sure the public understand, because I want this program to be successful. But, you know, it just seems like so many fashions of people are becoming so mean in the city of St. Louis that, you know, they're causing some people that, you know, glass is half full to feel hopeless. And that's unfortunate because they're not putting everything in context. They're not looking at the universe as a whole. They're just looking at agendas. And so that's why I'm asking these questions, because, you know, we're putting this money out there. We've committed millions of dollars to it, and I certainly want it to be successful. So thank you for helping put that in the right context. But I do want to go back to something James said, and maybe James may want to respond to this, because again, I was kind of torn between, you know, why are we not working with the police? And I understand, I respect, you know, for the integrity of the program, but what I heard James say, you know, was that they're working with a family that, you know, witnessed a homicide. You know, they want to put them out of harm's way. That is, and I'm excited about that, because we need more witnesses to come forward, and we will never deal with the issue of gun violence if we don't have good witnesses. So James, how do you reconcile, you know, hearing that, you know, we shouldn't work with the police, but then you are working with the police, you know? So
It is on an as needed basis, Alderman Boyd. It is not something that we do overtly, where we do not want to break the trust that is very necessary to make this successful. You know, the breach of confidence with the St. Louis City Police Department, as with law enforcement throughout the country, it is real. And so we have got to be able to get that trust so we can begin to challenge the culture. But we do have a St. Louis City Police Department that is very willing to do their part, that are open to, you know, standing down, to backing up. But when we need them, they will be there. But they are not the tip of the spear. They are not the tip of the spear. This is a model, and I'm going to reiterate it, that puts the subject matter expert at the tip of the spear, gives them training. And I sat through most of the Cure Violence Global training. It's excellent training, giving men and women who understand the mentality a skill set and a resource base, so that when they engage that young man or that young woman that is involved in an at-risk lifestyle, they can lead them out. And let me just add that we're talking about a 10 by 10. We are talking about a very manageable swath of land. And when you have individuals who are from the neighborhood, who know the shooters, who know the drug dealers, who know who's packing the pistols, and you put them in that 10 by 10 every day, and they're able to be there in the neighborhood, on the front porch, and in the living room, good things are going to happen. Good things are happening. And it's not going to be an overnight solution. But I believe that this is the best way forward. Let me get some hand sanitizer. My wife would kill me if she saw me coughing my hands. But I think that this is the best way forward for the St. Louis metropolitan area when you talk about crime and violence. We've tried everything. And I think that we've been too cerebral for too long. We got to boil it down.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I just want to say, I salute the work that you are doing and that Sal Martinez is doing. It can be dangerous work. You know, emotions are high, as you know, James, with a lot of, especially our young men in the city of St. Louis. It's kind of hard to make a negative comment to somebody these days without the fear of maybe losing your life. So the work that the interrupters do, the relationship that they're building in the community is critical. It's very critical. And I'll tell you, bro, I pray often, you know, for not only just the success of the program, but the safety of the workers who are doing the hard work in this program. It's real unfortunate, those who haven't heard, you know, the gentleman Dante Barksdale in Baltimore's program, I think they call it Safe Streets, but it's similar to cure violence, he was just murdered, a few days ago. I don't
Yeah.
know if it was because he was doing the work or it was just random, but it just brings to light, how serious and how dangerous this work can be. And I think trust is crucial and very important, and believing in the fidelity of the process, and we probably can't give enough money. I heard it being said, we need more of these areas with interrupters across the city of St. Louis, but at least we're starting somewhere. At least we got to start. And again, I'm glad Serena, brought it up. It does seem like we've been dealing with this for about 1.5 years, really. That's how long it seems like. But with COVID and really getting the program up and running, it took some time, and now we're here. And we still have a long way to go. So again, I appreciate the good work you guys are doing, James and Sal, and the management of Dr. Eccles with the health department. So I have no further questions or comments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Alderman Boyd, if I can just for a few seconds.
Okay.
First of all, I certainly appreciate your support of the program. And I think I know another big component of this program is doing what we can to change social norms. I had an opportunity to walk the community with the Wells Goodfellow Hamilton Heights team just before Christmas as we were distributing gifts to the high-risk families in the catchment area. And I got to tell you, I was really floored. We encountered several young men who were openly carrying what I would call a military-grade weapon, openly, as though you and I might carry a notebook and a thermos with some coffee in it. Luckily, I know you have. And you've been working to make the city of St. Louis a safer place for many, many years. Thankfully, our team of outreach workers and violence interrupters had credible relationships with these young men, because several of them wondered who the heck I was walking down the street with these individuals. So that was a really stark reminder of what reality is for far too many young people in our community. The AK-47s, the AR-15s, the 9mm Glocks were on full display just in the 2 or 3 hours that I walked the streets with our team.
Thank you again for the work you're doing. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Alderwoman Carol Howard, any questions?
Good afternoon. Yes, I do, Mr. Chair. I do have some questions. I want to commend all of you for the work and the dedication you're showing to this. And, as we all know, our city's in dire straits with the number of homicides and people losing their life on a daily basis, especially young people. I mean, anybody that loses their life to violence is horrible, but the amount of young people involved in this is heartbreaking. At this point, I just want to know a little bit, and this may have been already covered in another meeting, and I missed it. Can each of you just kind of go through and tell us your role with the board of directors? Serena, I take it you're with the St. Louis Mental Health Board. Is that correct?
Yes. When you say the board of directors, which board of directors?
Well, the Cure Violence Board is okay, and you're actively involved in the management of tell me what your role is.
Okay, sure. So I'm an employee of the St. Louis Mental Health Board, and we support a coalition called the St. Louis Area Violence Prevention Commission.
Okay.
And the Violence Prevention Commission has been supporting the Cure Violence Steering Committee. So all of that to say, I volunteer to provide staff support to the steering committee.
Okay, thank you so
Not
much.
a board as much as an advisory group.
Okay. And Reverend Norris? Is he still on, or did he leave us?
It's a Reverend Norris,
Yes, I'm here.
Trisha Clark, or
Yep.
the co-chairs for the steering committee.
Reverend Norris, I guess, how do you support the steering committee?
Can you pull that?
We evaluated the programs that made application to be a part of Cure Violence, and so and making sure that they adhere to the fidelity of the Cure Violence program. so that it has the proper linkages, because as has been stated, it is not a law enforcement program, but a public health issue. And so making sure that we are using those principles. And I serve on the steering committee as a clergy representative, of which I am also the president of the St. Louis Metropolitan Clergy Coalition.
And we need you. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Latricia Clark, or is it Latricia?
It's Latricia. How are you,
Okay.
Carol?
Hi.
Okay, I serve in probably 3 capacities. First, from a community engagement and advocacy standpoint, from the BOY, my organization with St. Louis City and St. Louis County. I also serve on the St. Louis Violence Prevention Committee, and I'm also the co-chair for the steering committee for Cure Violence.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And Mr. Clark?
Yes, I serve as Vice President of Public Safety and Community Response here at the Urban League of Metropolitan St. Louis. I oversee the Cure Violence model in the Walnut Park neighborhood, working to make sure that it's implemented to its fullest, and that it is yielding the results that we all believe that it can. That the staff is motivated, trained, doing all the necessary data entry, keeping up with all the necessary paperwork, and just making sure that that it's a wise investment, and that we are able to prove this model for future expansion.
Okay. And Mr. Martinez?
Hi, Alderwoman Howard.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good today. How are you?
Good. Good to see you.
You too. Good to be seen these days. I'm the CEO of Employment Connection, and we operate the Cure Violence sites in Wells, Goodfellow, Hamilton Heights, and Dutchtown.
Okay, so you actually provide some of the employment resources for those that we can direct your way.
Absolutely. And so does the Urban League. So both organizations have a significant number of wraparound services to assist these high-risk individuals and hopefully making better choices moving forward. One of the things that both the interrupters and outreach workers have experienced when they de-escalate conflict and when they counsel these high-risk individuals that they should make better decisions, what they often hear is, well, what can you do for me? And so they are now equipped with some resources, some opportunities that are geared exactly towards these individuals. The individual that I was talking about with the AR-15, he said, well, if you want me to put this down, I need a job.
Yeah.
And I said, well, come see us on Monday, because we have more jobs available than people to fill them with. And several of those employment opportunities are second chance friendly. So whatever you've done in the past, if you're willing to invest in yourself and take instruction and learn how to be a viable employee, there's a place for you.
Yeah.
So come see us.
And you told him to leave the gun at home, I hope.
Yes, this is a gun-free employment agency. So if he did bring it, he'd have to leave it in his vehicle. But in all seriousness, we're here to redirect their lives. We want them to live. We want them to raise their children. We want them to contribute to society. And historically at Employment Connection, over 50% of the clients we serve annually are justice involved. So this is a population that we're used to serving.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, my next question is, is the program up and running in all of the 3 neighborhoods? Do we have full employment and full staffing for all of those neighborhoods? And I don't know who should answer that.
The answer is yes to that question. So
Okay.
Each site is staffed, and they've gone through training that's been provided by Cure Violence Global.
Okay. And then one more question I should know, well, 2 more questions. What is the target audience, the age range of the target audience that the Cure Violence is designed to serve?
So our primary focus would be on high-risk individuals ages 16 to 25, Alderwoman. But we will also work with high-risk clients who are younger than 16 or older than 25. But based on the statistics, unfortunately, that is the age range that most often carries firearms in these communities.
I guess my concern is that sometimes they're cultivated much earlier than 16 years old.
Yes.
Is my concern is that many times the children are cultivated as young as 7, 8, 10 years old. And then, by the time they're 16, we're seeing them walking around with their AK-47. But you're open to serving those high-risk individuals, even if they aren't these 16 years old. Okay.
In fact, in town, I will say, Alderwoman, I didn't mean to interrupt you. We're
That's
working
okay.
with Jean Slay's Boys and Girls Club now, the Incarnate Word Foundation, Thomas Dunn Learning Center, Dutchtown CDC, to create a program for even younger people in the Dutchtown neighborhood for the very reason you just stated. Bob Purcelli has told us that a lot of the 10 to 16-year-olds that they work with at the club in Soulard, that they will now be working with in Dutchtown, they're very concerned about them. So we're meeting with them, and the hope is that we can launch a program at the younger population very soon.
Yes, and you were just the subject that actually Cure Violence was subject of a conversation that I had in a meeting with Bob Chiodini at the Dutchtown site this morning. So this is very opportune.
Said something nice about me, Alderwoman.
What's that?
I said, hopefully you said something nice about me, Alderwoman.
Oh, he had all kinds of nice things to say. But I guess the other thing is, do we have a number on how many clients we've touched so far? Do we have any of that data at all?
I think we can pull that data and send it out
Yes.
to the group. And so I'm not sure the point of contact would be Alderman Vaccaro.
Yes.
That would be fine. If you send it to me, I can forward it to the whole committee. That would be fine.
Because I think that would give us a baseline of how many people we've actually been able to reach out to, and know that, I understand that, as you said, Serena, you didn't really get full up and running until November. And, we're really in embryonic stages at this point. So I think that if we know how many people we've reached, maybe we can kind of keep a pulse on as we move out to hopefully see some reduction in the homicides. So that's all I have. Thank you very much. And I appreciate all the work you all have been doing. Thank you.
Alderwoman Tamika Hubbard.
Thank you.
Questions, comments?
I do. I have a few questions and a comment. First of all, thank you all for coming. I definitely support your efforts and everything that you are doing in the community. But what I wanted to ask about was actually measuring the effectiveness, because I don't believe that our numbers will instantly go down, even probably after a year or so. But how are you all measuring like the stuff that you do de-escalate? Like if one of the interrupters talk to somebody and they gather intelligence and they keep some stuff from happening, how are you all documenting that and actually measuring that? Because that's effectiveness, but how are you all measuring that?
So that's a great question, Alderwoman Hubbard. So Cure Violence Global provided training for each site on the data management system. So for each person that's case managed or linked to services, there's a mechanism in place for them to document that so that we can run reports off of that information. And as we're evaluating the implementation of the program, share that information with other individuals. So there's a mechanism in place for us to document that. And this is a standardized platform that all Cure Violence Global sites use. And that's why we had to be trained, the staff had to be trained by Cure Violence Global on how to document, place information into that particular database.
Okay, great. And another question I had was like, so for the interrupters, because I know you all specifically hired people from the community, people with street credibility, people who have been incarcerated and stuff like that. And I know that even if they're just walking up and down the streets, they may know some of these guys, but it's not that often that they're just gonna divulge certain pertinent information to them. So what type of training have you given the interrupters, and what type of timeline are you all giving them to be able to formulate those relationships in the community to be respected and revered enough to actually de-escalate?
That's a great question. So the Cure Violence Global provides training for each site. And so that entails them going out and showing them how to engage individuals in the community so that they can do it according to the model. So that's one of the first things that's done for each site. So individuals are properly trained so they can, because engaging the community is a really critical part of this program. Because as Sal mentioned earlier, when we talk about changing norms, you can't do that in a silo. You really need the community around the place where the site is planted to be engaged and involved to help change the norm for that community. And so Cure Violence Global, at the very beginning, they went out, they showed them how to engage individuals in the community. They also have shown them how to engage and de-escalate situations. And so Cure Violence Global provides technical assistance to every site. So we have separate contracts in place with Cure Violence Global. These are 15-month contracts where they have at least monthly discussions and meetings with the leadership, but also they'll come to St. Louis to provide any additional technical assistance to address any areas of improvement that are identified.
Okay. Thank you for that. And so, you know how if you do some type of forecasting or whatever, when it comes to these neighborhoods, you may make a nice dent in one particular neighborhood, but if it's an area where, for lack of a better word, it becomes hot and there's all this stuff going on, crime usually just moves around. So how have you all forecasted, I guess 2 or 3 years out, I forgot how long your grant is or project is, like how we will address getting into some of those other neighborhoods. Like for instance, my neighborhood wasn't selected, but I do know that we have a crime problem. And I do know that boots on the ground doing this type of work would definitely help the crime. So have you all looked at, you know, with budget shortfalls coming ahead, probably who knows how long, have you all looked at other funding sources or what you all can do to keep the program moving forward?
And so as relates to forecasting, so, you know, this last year in particular has been an unprecedented year that no one could have predicted, right? And so we are looking at making sure that this program is sustainable over time. So as the health department, we're always looking for additional funding opportunities to leverage the resources that are available in the city of St. Louis. But as it relates to making projections about the reduction in violent acts of gun violence, we tried to stray away from that. You know, our focus really had to be making sure we adhere to the fidelity of the model. If we got so caught up on the numbers, that can be a distraction for us. And so by working with Cure Violence Global intimately to make sure that each site implements the program according to the model is created, it gives us a better chance for success. So that's been our approach. However, we will be using the evaluation data to guide the future implementation of not only the current sites, but also we'll be using the data to justify the need for additional sites in the city of St. Louis.
Thank you. And I know you don't want to get caught up on the numbers, but the numbers are definitely important for us. And especially when we receive a lot of backlash, whether it be from police officers who are mad because they aren't involved or just people from the community. You know, everywhere you go, people are talking about, oh, Cure Violence is going on, and they expect it to be a magic bullet. Mm-hmm. And we know it doesn't work like that. But so data is very important, especially when you're allocating money at the level that we have allocated it to you all. So get caught up on the numbers, because that's something that only some people understand. And so we just have to do both of it. And I know that the model, and I get the whole trust part of it. I get all of that when it comes to having the police outside of it. But I just feel that going forward, I'm not saying you reveal some stuff, but you do have to gather some type of intelligence. If not, you're just throwing a rock at our crime problem, because it takes a lot of different pieces moving together. It takes what Sal does with Employment Connection. It takes what James does. It takes the police to truly address. And I know that this wasn't the magic bullet to address our crime problem, but when we're allocating so many resources toward it, I think there needs to be some type of cohesion. And not to, you know, mess up the model, but there needs to be some type of communication or something. I mean, with letting people maintain their anonymity and all of that stuff. But we definitely need to be working together to fully address our crime problem. And that's all I have. And once again, thank you all so much. I fully understand the work, and at the level that you are doing it is most impactful. And I appreciate that. But we all just need to be working together to truly see something, or we will not. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Alderman John Mohammed.
Hey, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I appreciate all the questions from the members of the committee that asked questions before me. I had some similar questions. One of the things that I am concerned with is, I guess, the tracking of data, because how do we know cure violence is effective in totality if we're not tracking data and if we're not comparing data? Also, I do want to acknowledge that the work that Urban League and Employment Connection does in my community specifically, but in our entire region, Sal and James, and you guys are fantastic. Anytime that I call you and request something to be done in my neighborhood, whether it's helping a young man find a job or whether it is intervening in a gang beef, you guys are always there, which I appreciate. So I know you guys are working hard to ensure that cure violence is successful in every way. But I guess just having some concrete data that we can use, because my constituents are asking, what is cure violence working, and what's going on with cure violence and its implementation, and how is it being productive in terms of reducing crime or reducing gun violence? Because, and we all live in the city of St. Louis. Our residents expect to see overnight change, which is somewhat impossible, but that's what residents want to see. But I think just having some concrete data to make public, I think that will help us, because I have gotten a few calls from residents asking what's going on with cure violence and why do we give so much money, and that money could have been used on police. Again, not fully understanding that if we do not take another approach to crime or just to the gun epidemic that our city is experiencing right now, then we're going to continue to get the same results. But some type of data used to track, what Employment Connections is doing and what Urban League is doing, I think is essential. And I also agree with you, James, Mr. Vice President. I think that we should be expanding cure violence, because in my ward, I am proud to say that crime has dropped by more than 20%, but I still have a high crime rate area where crime is just rampant. And I would love to see cure violence operate in the 21st ward. I know, Sal, I know you would as well, being that this is your second home here. But I, again, going back to
Alderman Mohammed, I think we lost you there. You cut out.
So I guess hopefully he'll join back in. But one of the things I wanted to mention as well is, we have started having discussions about how we get information out to the public. And as Sabrina put it in the chat, we will be publishing a cure violence website as part of under the health department's site on the city's web platform. But we also want to make sure that we have standardized metrics that we can make available to the community, so they can also follow us along this implementation road, if you will, for cure violence. And so that we are having discussions about that, because we want the information. We don't just want to publish information. We want to make sure the information is meaningful and also is a true reflection of what's happening in the communities where cure violence is being implemented.
Alderman Mohammed, are you still with us on your phone?
I am, Mr. Chairman.
Okay,
thank you.
Cut out there, we lost you.
Yeah, I don't know what happened, just disconnected. But I did hear the director's response, and I just somewhat disagree. And maybe I'm misunderstanding his response, but not making information public as it relates to cure violence, as it relates to us spending $8 million on a plan that people are expecting to see results. I just disagree a little bit in terms of being strategic.
When you dropped off, he didn't say that it wouldn't be available. He said that it would be available.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I was interrupted. So again, Mr. Chairman, I may have missed it, but I heard him say that being strategic on what information we put out, And that's why information has not been published, and it's in the process of being published. And I just, in my personal opinion, I think that after almost a year of an operation, I think that numbers should have been made public because people want to see results. And at the end of the day, this is not, this is not some private money that we're using. We're using taxpayer dollars. So in terms of being strategic on what information we put out, I think that that's a little, it's a little perplexing to me, because we need to do this in a transparent way. And some people already feel that cure violence was not done transparently. Organizations feel left out, neighborhoods feel left out, residents feel left out. And I don't think that this should be another factor added on to that already left out list. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, one fast thing that because I got a text. See, someone's asking what neighborhoods are Cure Violence active in, and is there a website where someone can go to find this information? Dr. Eccles.
Sure. So the three neighborhoods where Cure Violence is being implemented is the Wells Goodfellow Hamilton Heights neighborhood, Walnut Park, and Dutchtown. We're in the process of developing a website for Cure Violence, so that this will be a public-facing site where individuals can go to learn more about not only Cure Violence, but also the steering committee and other organizations that are supporting this very critical work as it relates to the metrics. So we want to make sure that there are standardized metrics that we can update at least, if not monthly, quarterly. But we also, as I also mentioned, we want to make sure that the information is meaningful for the community, so that they can really follow the implementation of Cure Violence across the city of St. Louis.
Thank you.
And if I can add something, Alderman Muhammad, it's going to be a lot of data. The violence interrupters and the case managers, they enter data daily. So there's going to be a lot of data coming out of this model.
So, okay, we're going to move on down the line. Alderwoman Pam Boyd, any questions or comments?
I have both. I keep hearing the comment, and I keep hearing people talk about data and talk about information. And so I understand the pandemic, and I mean, I'm in the middle of it like everybody else. But I think what the challenge is for the community is nobody actually knows what's going on, and they're looking at the dollars that we're in. And that's something that everybody that's in that community is aware of what's going on, because every meeting that I'm at, or every Zoom meeting I'm at, the same question comes out. What is Cure Violence doing? And so I don't think it's to the point they're questioning the work. I just think they're questioning the process and how it plays out into our community. People need to understand it's not a fix-all, and it's only one piece to the puzzle. Crime is not just about Cure Violence, and they're not the only piece that's going to fix it. And so it's several pieces that's going to be included. And I heard James and Sam talk fluently about the services. And so it's pretty much the wraparound service what we've been talking about that's needed in these communities. And so it goes from the guy carrying the gun to the family that the guy has. How are they all going to be impacted to ensure that it's safety across the board? So I just think people are, my residents, numbers mean something, but it means more when you can tell my residents, we help 25 families, and that means that we got 25 people off the street that have a job, or that's in school, or that's getting the services they're needed to be a fulfilling family to their community. So is people need to be understanding it's just a piece of that puzzle. And I'm saying that because Serena and Dr. Eccles, Clark, Mike McMillan, they are very aware of my questions, my consistency in trying to get the understanding, because I don't want people to ask me at meetings what's going on and I can't fluently explain myself. And so I can't explain the dollars that were spent if I don't have the information. And so it's not just taking a gun from a person. It's from embracing a family to save the person. Because people don't look at it when somebody dies, it's not just that person that dies, it's a whole generation of people that's been impacted. So that's how I look at it. And so the question that I have is, since they have gotten their training, and by the way, I think we have a good team in Walnut Park, and they finally made through all the training and all that they're going through. So now when will they start being more public in regards to getting information out?
Yeah, Alderwoman, I'm glad that that you recognize that they are a good team. They're in the neighborhood every day. They're going door to door every day. They are collecting data every day. They are connecting individuals with resources. And so, as I said before, there's a strong data trail that will outline all of this. I will have Dr. Young L reach out to you and keep you updated. And we would invite you back to come and talk to the guys at the location at 6050.
Okay.
So whenever you want to stop by, the door is open.
And I know that in Young L, we do stay in communication, but I think it's to the point, and again, as we kept referring back to the pandemic, people are scared and they don't want to, take the chances, and I want to protect my seniors. And Dr. Ethel has come to our safety meeting and he's come to our war meetings and talked about it. But I just think that we just need to figure out a way to publicly make sure people in that community are aware that they're there. And the team is not a lot of guys, so they can't cover the whole area. So I just want us to try to figure out a way that we can get the information out to people so we can make sure that people know, because like we have our safety meeting tonight where Dr. Eccles will be on our safety meeting. And that was a question that came up, what about cure violence? Well, Dr. Eccles will talk to them about that. But I just want people to be knowledgeable enough to know. And I try to explain it. But you know how our residents are, they'll say, well, I didn't get it. And a lot of people keep saying, well, we'll put it on the internet. Well, I hate to tell you, but the people in my ward, everybody don't have a computer and everybody don't have internet access. So we got to figure another way to communicate with people to make sure that they know what cure violence is and that it's there to assist them in the whole piece of the puzzle. That's all. Thank you.
And I agree. If it weren't for that COVID, I think we should take this committee and this on the road. I really believe that. We used to go, 2 or 3 neighborhoods, but it's just not possible. But hopefully as they get these shots out and we get a little more freedom to meet in public, that would be nice. Alderwoman Shameen Clark Hubbard, any questions or comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any additional questions. All the questions that I have pretty much have been asked and answered. I just want to thank all of you all that are on the call for all the work you're doing, especially the work that's being done in the Wells Goodfellow area, the pockets that Alderman Boyd and I share. I often talk to some of the people that work in that office and work on the ground with it, and they tell me about the good things. and the changes and the impact that they've been making. I know this is a good start. Like Ms. Clark said, this is a health reach and a health lens that we're putting on this already pandemic of crime that we've been going through in the city and in St. Louis and in our neighborhood. So I just thank you all. Please keep up the good work and know that we're here to support you all moving forward.
Thank you. Now, I believe, Madam Clerk, I have the order right, but I believe it would be Alderwoman Gracias, then Alderwoman Navarro, then Alderman Gunther. Am I right in the order?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so then Alderwoman Gracias, you're first up, then it would be Alderwoman Navarro, then Alderman Gunther. So
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to ask a couple of questions, and thanks so much to all of you for taking time out of your schedules to update us today. I think all of us are excited about the program and subsequent to the challenges that COVID has put in your way. I think we're off to a decent start. Dr. Eccles, can you speak to, if memory serves, it was my understanding that we were going to engage an academic partner to do an independent evaluation of the Cure Violence program. Is that something that's been done already or still in the works?
Yeah, that's something that's still in the works. So there's a couple of things that have to happen. So one, they'll have to be granted access to the database that's being used so they can pull the data and also analyze it and develop descriptive language. But then there's also has to be a scope of work that we're trying to fine tune. So there were different options that were presented. And so we're trying to figure out which of those options will work best for the budget constraints as well as the overall implementation of the model.
Do you have somebody, an institution with whom you're partnering, or is that also still not been determined?
We have received some proposal from an institution. I don't want to name them yet, but we have received proposals.
Okay, that's super helpful. I think that will alleviate a lot of the concerns with respect to the data evaluation, because it's my hope that it does prove to be working well and that we are able to expand. I think everyone realizes that unless we're addressing crime in this way in the neighborhoods that need it in totality, there's going to be gaps in ways for this violent behavior to continue. Let's see here. I know that there was a break, sort of the grassroots community organizers that initially brought Cure Violence to the attention of the board most recently have sort of parted ways. And so I'm curious if, I don't need to have a comprehensive list today, and it sounds like it's going up on the website, but I think it would be good for aldermen and the public to know who is sitting in on the advisory committee. And I'm curious, I appreciate the fact that this information seems to be close to getting launched on a website, but should these advisory or steering committee meetings be public? Like, should they be published on the city's website so that everyone knows when to expect them? Are they meetings that members of the community are able to sit in on?
So I know there's charters that, this city charter kind of governs how official boards. So this is an advisory board, more of an informal board. So it doesn't fall under the charter restrictions at this point in time. However, if at a point we do want to make this a more formal advisory board, we'll work with the city council's office to make sure we're following the city's charter requirements.
Okay, yeah, I think to the points that other of my colleagues have brought up with respect to transparency, even if it's not required, if it's available for members of the public, including aldermen, that would be valuable. Let's see here. So if, I know that you listed the sort of atypical hours that these employees and violence interrupters are working, which I appreciate, but as we all know, especially elected officials, and I'm sure you, Dr. Eccles, a lot of times things happen out of anyone's work hours. So what happens when a shooting occurs or there's some concern that there's the potential for violence to occur? Is there someone on call in these neighborhoods that is responding to those scenes every time? I've heard a couple of times, and I'm sure it's not fully up and running, that in a couple of the neighborhoods that there was not a Cure Violence representative at the scene of a crime. So I'm just curious kind of how that works on the ground.
Thank you for that question. So there are protocols in place, and so I'll have James Clark and Sal Martinez speak to that, as they are closer to the front lines than I am.
So yes, we do have individuals that are on call. So individuals can call our site manager, they can call our outreach supervisor, they can call me for that matter, as it relates to Wells, Goodfellow, Hamilton Heights, and Dutchtown. The team has responded to shootings on their off days already. Yesterday, when most of their teammates here at Employment Connection were celebrating Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, they visited the household of a recent shooting victim in Dutchtown. So they were actually working on their off day. And so they understand and have been taught by Cure Violence Global that they are actually never off of the clock when doing this work, and they have embraced that. So I apologize if that's happened in one of the 3 neighborhoods that Employment Connection is overseeing, but I can assure you that that will not happen again.
Okay, and I don't know, it was brought to my attention secondhand, so I don't know that that's accurate.
And you know, I can echo Sal's sentiment that that these guys, they work 24/7. But I do think that that we got to remember that they focus on a very small swath of land. While they will respond to a conflict anywhere, their zone is their zone. If there's a shooting within that small handprint, then they will respond. So you know, this is a very dynamic model that that really goes to the heart of the matter. You know, we have the right men and women working the model. But to answer your question, that was the exception. That was not the rule.
Okay, I don't have any other questions, but thanks again to all of you. I know that you're putting in the time on this, and I appreciate, again, you clarifying some of the issues I brought up.
Okay, so we had, hang on one second. I'm sorry.
Alderwoman Navarro was next on the list.
That's what I was going to say. And I'm going to switch over to my phone, and we've added a few more people to the list. I see Alderwoman Rice, as well as Alderman Brett Narayan.
Alderman Narayan was before Alderwoman Rice.
Okay, I'm going to let you call them in the order they are, and I'll be here, but I'm going to be mobile to my phone now, because I have to pick my dog up from the vet, and I apologize. So I'll be here. Just I'll let you call that, and I'll be able to answer anything.
Will do. Alderwoman Navarro.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for this opportunity. And thank you again to everybody who's on this call today, taking this time. I know I've been eager to get updates, and I know it's been a particularly challenging year given all of the setbacks. So thank you for your time today. And I'll be brief. Most of my colleagues and the committee people have kind of asked some of the questions that I had regarding just measurement of outcomes and success. And so I won't go over that again, other than to say, I understand that the nature of this work, especially the relationship building part, is not necessarily measurable in the same way we expect other outcomes to be measured. So I understand that. And I also understand the delays because of COVID. And so that means we don't necessarily have as much data as we would have hoped. I think something that will be helpful, I don't know that you all can answer this today, but if there is going to be a reporting, on a website that's providing information, there are long-term outcomes, being able to see actual decreases in violent crime, which is what we want to see. But I would imagine there's also short-term outcomes. So the number of referrals, the number of people who have been trained, the number of interactions, the quality of those interactions, all of those sorts of things. I would hope that we could see, especially if we are going to be asked to expand this program at some point in time. I think that there is still a lot of data and a lot of information that would be available even now. Just knowing the number of employees who have been trained, the number of referrals that have been made, what the nature of those referrals, how many of those were COVID related, how many of them were crime related, all of those various things. And you may all have that, and it sounds like that will be available soon. So I guess my specific question would be, is that data available now, and when do you see that being released? And then I guess the second part of that would be, how have you adjusted those milestones and those objectives based on COVID? Because I imagine you went into this with goals and objectives, short and long term, and then those have had to have been adjusted because of COVID. So the narratives that you've shared today and some of the stories have been extremely helpful. But I think in having something measurable and understanding how those outcomes have adjusted because of COVID would be really helpful.
That's a really great question. So as we think about evaluation of the project and what information we need to really guide the implementation moving forward, those are things that we're thinking about. But we're doing that in we're not doing that in a silo. So we are working with the steering committee. We'll be working with the academic departments, academic institutions to make sure that we're using sound practices for our evaluation, as well as want to make sure the information, as I mentioned before, we want to make sure it's meaningful, not only for the community, but also for the sites. And I have Serena chime in as well, because she's been involved in a lot of those discussions.
Yeah, I want to emphasize that a part of the reason that we have the steering committee is we are external. So to the earlier point about why it doesn't quite feel like a city board, it's because it did come from community members who were just trying to monitor and keep track of what's happening. So when we publish the website, what we would like to do is give feedback from this group and from others about what information is missing, what you would like to see. We field questions all of the time as well. And one of our roles is to be able to do some of that administrative stuff behind the scenes so that we're not distracting the sites. So we don't want to take up so much time from Sal and James on reporting and distributing information and that kind of thing, because their time is better served actually doing the work in the community. So we've kind of stepped into that space of being able to provide information. So once we have that site launched, we'd love feedback on what's missing, what you would like to see, what we should add. That's one of the roles that we want to be able to play, is to communicate to you and to others what's actually happening. And to Alderman Boyd's point, to be available to speak to groups, because we know not everybody's going to go to the website.
Thank you. And do you have a timeline for when you anticipate the website being live?
This month.
This month. Okay, great. Thank you. That's I believe that's all of the questions that I had. Thank you.
Alderman Gunther.
Yes, I want to thank Mr. Chairman for allowing us the opportunity to ask questions, and also thank everyone who is on this call and a part of making sure that Cure Violence is a success in the city. I think the first thing that I just want to ask was the Alderwoman from the 14th earlier on, when everyone's asking about data. She asked Dr. Eccles about being able to provide more specific data to the Public Safety Committee, which he agreed to send it to the chairman. My question would be that, can that be something, if there is more specific data that you don't want to share on the website, if you send it to the Public Safety Committee, can it be sent to all older people, send it to the clerk, or some way that we all get that information? Because I know that public safety is something that concerns everyone on this board, and not just the people on the committee. So that was my one question. Data
I will make
to the entire.
I will make sure that it gets forwarded to the entire board. And Mr. Clerk, if you're on here, if you would just give it to the clerk, I would say please provide it to the entire board, as well as the Public Safety Committee.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yes, So that was my question. We've all asked a lot about data, and I'm encouraged that this month that there will be a website that is set up that we can pass along to our constituents to be able to get the information about the program. And then I just want to make a couple comments. This past Saturday, I had the opportunity to sit on our first Dutchtown Zoom meeting with the members of the Dutchtown Cure Violence. So Sal, thank you for setting up. We had Danae, we had Jarrell Williams, we had, who else did we have? Prospect, Brother L, a handful of people. And it was a great turnout from the Dutchtown community, and really a very good discussion about what we would like to see as neighbors of some of the things offered, such as the wraparound services of employment, education, stuff like that. So I want to just thank Sal for allowing that to happen. I will mention, since Serena just asked, what are some things we would like to see? And from that Zoom that we had just this past Saturday, a few members of the community did bring up that it would be nice if there were a more public way of looking for people that are interested in trauma assistance or victim services, to where a lot of times, if there's a shooting on a block, it may be the neighbor 4 doors away that is suffering the trauma of constantly hearing these gunshots, and to be able to have, whether it's on the website or whether it's just one of those resources that we could put out of some sort of 24-hour trauma sort of helpline, that I think is something that a lot of people ask for. Especially the seniors that may live on a block that has, one person doing a lot of shooting, but they might not get the knock on the door from Cure Violence, but to be able to give them some sort of trauma support would be a website or onto the list. And then I guess the other thing I wanted to mention, like Sal said yesterday, the members were actually in my ward. I had a 17-year-old named Paris that was murdered. And the members of the community on Dr. King Day were meeting with the family to see how they can be of assistance with not only making sure that there is no further retribution, but also meeting their needs. They're having trouble coming up with the money to bury their son right now. So that's something I spent all morning working on, trying to get some funding for that. And then 2 weeks ago, I was at we were doing a coat drive on Cherokee Street, and members of Cure Violence were there participating in our community coat drive. In the middle of the coat drive, we got a call about a shooting on the 3700 block of Ohio, and Brother L and Prospect, Eric White, were both at the meeting. They took the call, and they said, "Sorry, Dan, we got to go." And they just immediately picked up on a Saturday morning and headed to the site. So I think it's important to emphasize that this is 24/7. You never know when you're going to get that call. But again, Sal, the people you have in your Dutchtown, I think are some of the best people we can get to be doing this. So I just want to say thank you. And I look forward to continuing to support this in any way possible. So thank you very much.
Can I respond to Alderman Gunther?
Thank you very much.
Sorry. I was just going to, I put it in the chat, but I was going to say your question about where people can reach out if they have resources. We have a partnership with United Way 211. If you dial 211 and press 2, there's a gun violence response network. It's not for violence interruption, but it's for the things that you talked about, people who have experienced trauma, are trying to recover, who need help. And that's one of the reasons I mentioned the role of the steering committee as being an enhancement to Cure Violence, because Cure Violence isn't designed to do all of this, but we have partners who can help fill in some of those gaps.
Yeah, thank you very much, Serena. I've 211 a number of times, but I did not know that we could press 2 to get to the gun violence option. So thank you for that.
And Alderman Gunther, I don't know if you heard me. I think Serena and I were talking at the same time. I want to thank you for your support and leadership. I also want to tell you that we have delivered some things to Mr. Jones's family today. And Serena and I were in touch this morning, in fact, and someone from the Crime Victim Center will be calling Ms. Jones to talk about the possibility of providing some assistance as relates to the funeral expenses. So I just want to let you know that that's in progress. So thank you so much for everything you've done to support the team.
Thanks a lot, Sal. Thank you.
Alderman Ryan.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the chairman for allowing us all to ask a couple of questions, and just thank everyone on the call. I just have a couple of questions that I'd like to direct towards Dr. Eccles. But again, I'd like to start by just thanking you for everything you do, Doc. I know it's been a tough year for you. I'm certainly not jealous of all the things that you've had to deal with over the last year. So we know that crime rates are up nationwide. We've seen violent crime rates go up all over the place, and we knew that this program was going to take a while for the violence interrupters to kind of work their way into the community, and to see the fruit of their labor was going to take some time. I also know that it's really hard to get data to show what didn't happen, especially when we're looking at the data set as a whole being different than many other years. So I do share some of the concerns that the alderwoman from the 5th and the alderman from the 21st had about data, but I think we've covered that quite extensively. But ultimately, do you believe that this program either is working right now, or it's actively taking the steps in order to hopefully have a less violent summer? I mean, that's when the majority of our violent crime tends to happen over the summer months. And I'm just trying to figure out, without a data set, whether we believe that this is a good use of our resources. And I think that you all would be the best folks to answer that.
So I'll start, and then I'll pass the baton to other members. So I do think that, in short, I think the program is working. I think we also have to be mindful of the fact that this is the first time in the city's history that we have an evidence-informed approach to addressing gun violence in this manner. And so this is a difficult feat. And so, I think managing expectations for not only government officials, but also the community at large is really important. So they understand that we're using this program to address an issue that has impacted lives in our community for decades, if not centuries, right? And so there's a lot that you can't do in 6 months. And so, but what we can do in 6 months is start working to change those social norms. So make sure there's a really diligent effort in establishing those relationships with the community, similar to what other pillars of the communities do. So for example, communities of faith or churches. So they work to engage those constituents that are surrounding the site where the establishment is planted. And so that's a lot of the work that's being done now with the canvassing of the area, engaging community members and informing them and educating them about what queer violence is and how queer violence is being utilized to improve outcomes in particular communities. So that's really critical. But I think as we look at even this past year, although it wasn't ideal, there were some victories there. And so I think if we capitalize on those victories, that puts us in a better position to move forward. But the data discussion is data is something we talk about in public health all the time. And so we have to make sure that we have sound metrics that we can evaluate, not just at one site, but all sites. And so as everyone has talked about at length today, making sure we adhere to the fidelity of the model that has been created is really the number one priority, because we don't adhere to the fidelity of the model that was created, we really can't effectively evaluate the program and implementation across the sites. And so making sure we're capturing appropriate data and then using that data to justify increasing the number of sites in the city of St. Louis is really going to be critical, because we have to be mindful as well that this is not, wasn't intended to be a short-term investment. The intent was sort of to be a long-term sustainable investment, because it took us centuries, decades to get to where we are. It's going to take us a long time to undo a lot of the damage that's been done. I'll pass the baton to Serena Muhammad at this time.
I just want to add that a part of the issue that we're talking about when we talk about data is information sharing. And at the root of information sharing is communication. So one thing that might be helpful is to have more consistent communication between this committee and perhaps even up to the Board of Aldermen about progress and things that are happening to date. The steering committee did have a request to have a representative from this committee to participate on the steering committee. That invitation is still open. I think the person that was originally assigned wasn't able to attend, but whatever the past hiccups have been, I think there's an opportunity to strengthen that communication between the steering committee and this group so that you at least have more real-time information.
And then I know the data is hard, and I'm not trying to belabor that point, but anecdotally even, can you say with some certainty that this program at this point has stopped violent acts from occurring in the city?
So I'll have Sal chime in on this, because he's on the front lines and he can provide that information.
Well, Alderman, what I can tell you is that both teams have conducted several mediation and de-escalation sessions already. It's hard to quantify how many shootings that may have prevented, but I would tell you that these individuals that they have been conducting these sessions with are individuals that are known to carry firearms, who are known to react to a conflict with shooting someone. So the fact that they have been able to develop credible relationships with these individuals, to me, is an indicator of success. I would also say that our outreach workers have already registered several of these high-risk clients on their caseloads. And so like a case manager, they will track the progress of these individuals through our various programs. So those individuals who say they want employment, they will be reporting on their journey. Are they signing up for our soft skills class? Or are we connecting them to the other wraparound services that they may need? Have we been able to place them in employment? How are they doing in employment? So all of that data will be collected in the database because we want to be able to share those success stories with the community, with the Board of Aldermen, et cetera. Because again, this is about changing social norms. This is ultimately about changing lives. And so we fully intend to report on the progress of the clients that we're working with in this program.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Alderman. It is having success. It is very early, but we are engaging the right people in the neighborhood. We are engaging high-risk individuals, people who are at risk of being on either side of the gun barrel. We are getting some strong outcomes because they are looking for help. They really want to improve the quality of their life. The problem has been that they don't go too far outside of their neighborhood. So when you take a credible person, a person that many of them know, because we are recruiting people who have the street credibility from the neighborhood. So we have uncles that we've hired that are out in the neighborhood talking to their nephews and their nephews' friends. We have hired young men who turned their life around and now they're in the neighborhood speaking to their peers, training them on how to be case managers, training them on how to do data entry. So I think that the Cure Violence model is taking us into a new space that we have not delved into before. And I believe that it's going to continue to show promise, and that it's going to be something that we can all be proud of in the upcoming weeks, months, and years.
I also want to give Reverend Norris an opportunity to chime in as well.
Yes, I'd like to make sure that we don't miss the gravity of what's happening here. The dots are being connected with multiple organizations from multiple disciplines. And this is the beginning of something. And so I want to encourage us all to, just as we're building these key relationships in the neighborhoods, I think the people on this phone need to understand how vitally important it is for us all to be in the relationships that's going to allow the information to flow. The first iteration of this, remember, we did not have the infrastructure in place to do all of this. So really, and one of the things that we've not talked about in terms of success, an infrastructure has been put in place over the past year that is going to allow us to start giving the report, the information that's needed to connect with the organizations that are needed. So I think that should not be missed in terms of how we're significantly moving forward. And so to answer your question, yes, I think there is enormous upside, and I'm sure that this program will work if we continue on the path that we are.
Well, thank you all so much for your answers, and thank you for your work. And I look forward to continuing to work with you guys on this project as it moves forward, and hoping that we do see a meaningful reduction in crime all throughout the city as a result of the work that y'all are putting in. So thank you so much.
Alderwoman Rice.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, again, for allowing those of us not on the committee to ask some questions. Thank you all so much for being here and for investing a significant amount of time in reporting back. And I agree, Serena, the more we can have a sort of regular communication between the board, that would be wonderful. Even if, it's secondhand information that I'm getting from the Public Safety Committee. There's been just so much information presented today that I didn't know as well, and particularly about 211 and the Gun Violence Response Network. That's new information. And also, just to clarify, if I could, Dr. Eccles, the sort of open dates of operation on each of the sites. And I would clarify that as not as when we've got trained folks who are actually out working, not just that we've started a site. Could you clarify when each of the sites sort of got up and operational?
Right, so the Wells Goodfellow Hampton Heights location was the first location that was up and operational, and that was June 2020. And then the subsequent sites, so Dutchtown and Walnut Park, were up and running in November.
Okay, great. That's very helpful, since I think there is an expectation out in the community, or maybe a false understanding that this has been operational a whole lot longer than that. And because the conversations that we had as the Board of Aldermen were obviously previous to that. So that is helpful to know, and sort of setting expectations for where we are. And then how many outreach workers or interrupters or folks sort of out on the streets are there working at each of those locations at the moment?
So that's a question for, so there's a standardized staffing pattern for each site, but I'll let Sal and James speak to their respective sites.
Sure. Alderwoman Rice, we have a total of 9 employees at the Wells Goodfellow Hamilton Heights site. That includes 1 site manager, 1 outreach supervisor, 4 violence interrupters, with one of those individuals being part-time, and 3 outreach workers. And we are hiring for the last open position now. Matter of fact, we have an interview with a good candidate this week. We have 8 people currently working at the Dutchtown office: site manager, outreach supervisor, 3 violence interrupters, and 2 outreach workers. The outreach supervisor, the violence interrupters, and outreach workers all work that unconventional schedule that I mentioned. At the Dutchtown site, our site manager works a more typical schedule of 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. I will say we have 3 female employees between the 2 sites, which I'm very excited about that. We definitely wanted to make sure that we hired the best and the brightest individuals for this work. And so we understand that women can do this work just as effectively as men can. The site manager at the Wells Goodfellow Hamilton Heights site, who some of you may know, his name is Darren Seals. Darren has been doing conflict mediation and de-escalation work in the city of St. Louis for many years. He works the same schedule as the rest of the team because he wants to be out in the community with them during those unconventional times. So that's the distinction between the two site managers at our two locations at this time.
Yes, we also have 9 full-time staff in the Walnut Park neighborhood, 4 violence interrupters and 3 case managers, a outreach coordinator and site director. We also have an administrative person that works to collect the data and to help keep the manage the data. And it's been a good experience. We took a deep dive and we looked at the men and women who come from the neighborhood. One of the things that the Cure Violence model emphasizes is that the person should come from the targeted neighborhood. So we took a deep dive. We looked for community credible people, individuals who have an ongoing relationship with the high risk individuals. And so it's one of the points that I make is that I'm not looking for a high turnover rate. So I really stress to the staff that we have got to be committed to this work. I really stress to them that you are pioneering in this space, that your time has come. All of your past history is serving you right now. So very excited with our team and think that they will believe and know that there are going to be some very strong outcomes in the upcoming weeks, months, and years with the Cure Violence model.
Great, thank you so much. And then the last question I had was, I know since Cure Violence has rolled out in many other neighborhoods around the country, do they have sort of an example of a data set on the website or on their organizational website that would show us kind of what the data set will look like when it comes out here in St. Louis? Are you familiar with that at all?
So I don't think they post aggregate data on their website. I don't think they have specific reports that are used by the different sites. But if there's something that the committee is interested in learning more about, I'm sure that we can work to obtain some sample documents, if you will, for you all to review.
Okay. All right, great. And lastly, I specifically wanted to thank Reverend Norris for your hopeful comments and encouragement. That is always particularly working in this space and with what the city is suffering right now, to hear the hope, to hear the encouragement, to know how hard all of you on this call are working is refreshing. So just thank you all. And again, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to ask questions.
No problem. I don't think we have anyone else with their hands up. So at this point, I just want to thank all the participants. And at this point, we'll take a motion to actually adjourn the meeting unless someone has something else left to say.
Mr. President, could I say something, please?
You sure can.
Thank you all for coming to
President.
Mr. Chair.
I like the president thing. Don't worry about that.
I want to thank everybody for coming, and it wasn't as bad. You all still have your rear ends left, and so nobody chewed you all up. Sal, quit laughing. But I want to also thank President Reed, because he had the foresight to push for these dollars to make sure that we got this to focus on this crime thing. And so thank you all as a team. Thank you all that put up with me for my hollering, screaming, jumping up and down, Dr. Eccles and Serena laughing. So I appreciate you all, and I thank you for your patience. And so I think this is going to be a success more than the community realizes. That this is going to be an added benefit to our city. Thank you.
Hearing no other comments.
Well, Mr. Chair, one quick thing to add. So one of the things that's come up in this meeting is that everyone has a role to play in helping this program be successful. And so whether you're an alderman, whether you're a layperson in the community or you're a government official, everyone has a role to play to help us address issues of not only cure violence, but also other public health issues that have adversely and can continue to adversely impact health outcomes in our community. And so we're grateful to have champions such as you in tune with us and actually willing to learn more about what we're doing on the front lines. But we hope that this isn't the last meeting. So we'd love to provide additional updates for you all as we move forward so that everyone will have accurate information and can share accurate information amongst your networks and your circles.
Thank you, Dr. Eccles, and thank you, everyone. And if we could, I would love to take this on the road, but right now, of course, you know, can't happen. So hearing no other questions, I don't believe, I will look for a motion to adjourn the meeting. If anybody wants to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Okay, and I'll second that. So again, thank you everyone for participating in the meeting. It was very informative, and everybody be safe, and we'll see you at tomorrow's meetings. So we're adjourned.